Good morning. Good morning to everybody joining the Elevate Greater Akron webinar. We're going to give everyone just a quick moment to join, and then we will begin. It's great to have you here. Good morning once again to everyone joining our Elevate Greater Akron webinar. Welcome. It's really great to have you here. I'm Emily Lungard, Vice President for Elevate Greater Akron. I and my colleague Anna Pitts support the nearly 20 partner organizations who comprise the Elevate Greater Akron Collaborative. This unique economic development collaborative works together to advance shared priorities for shared prosperity in Greater Akron. So thanks again for attending today's webinar. This is actually the second in a series of webinars that we'll be doing every quarter, designed to share more with you, key community and business leaders, all about what the Elevate Collaborative is, what we're working on, and the impact we're hoping to have in the community. So on behalf of the entire Elevate Collaborative, we really hope today is an opportunity to share those updates, but probably more importantly, really hear your questions and answer your questions. So as additional attendees join today's webinar, we're going to play a brief 5-minute video that should really set the stage for today's discussion. So with that, Anna, take it away.
In a time when economic landscapes are shifting fast, one region is rising to the challenge. Elevate Greater Akron, a powerhouse collaboration of government, business, and civic leaders, is driving forward shared prosperity. Born in 2018 from the bold vision of the County of Summit, City of Akron, Greater Akron Chamber, and JAR Foundation, Elevate Greater Akron was built to transform how economic development gets done.
The city, the county, and the chamber were visiting the same businesses on a regular cycle. The businesses were very, very confused. So the city, the county, and the chamber got together in one room and decided it would make the most sense for businesses if we somehow collaborated.
So Elevate Greater Akron came together about 5 or 6 years ago when we really took a look at our economic situation in Greater Akron and decided that if we don't start making some bigger bets or doing some more work to collaborate and connect resources, we're not going to create the kind of growth that we need.
Today, Elevate is comprised of nearly 20 partners united by a shared vision. Focus on what works, collaborate, and grow the region.
I would describe Elevate Greater Akron as like a wheel with a bunch of spokes. And Elevate is here to help and serve our community, especially our businesses.
Elevate Greater Akron is really a way of working. So it's a mutual commitment to improving the way that we serve businesses and thinking about the way that we work from a business-first mentality.
Our shared priorities? Sustainable polymers, continuing our rise as the global polymer capital. Economic inclusion, championing opportunity for all of Greater Akron. Downtown Akron, recognizing a strong downtown means a strong region. And coordinating intentional support of businesses. That's what we call the new fundamentals.
We talked about this idea of the new fundamentals. To do work well in economic development, you have to do the blocking and tackling well. You have to make sure you have the sites that are necessary to have people invest in. You have to make sure that people can get access to the resources and navigate around the ecosystem of support that exists. You have to do the basics for just answering the phone and responding to your small businesses, or to sort of figure out how to get people to the right level of talent they need for the jobs we have available.
We come together as a group every Wednesday. So at least 50 weeks of a year, we are meeting together. At that time, we discuss, the ongoing projects, and we evaluate our relationships with various businesses.
So meet the business where they are, all come together to save time for the business and be in the same room with one conversation.
There might be a project going on, for example. We will look to see what resources we can provide for the business. The business might need to be connected to someone to loan them money or resources for them to complete their project. The business might need workers. We connect them to workers.
3 years ago, me and my partner, we acquired this company. We were in immediate need, moving all this equipment, setting up electricity and all. It was big thing, right? I didn't know many people in Akron, so I contacted small business development. They made it so smooth, like they were so knowledgeable. All these people, they worked together. They had like a few meetings with me, and they understood my problem.
So each of the partners in Elevate has their own strength. Not unlike a great team, whether you're a sports team or you're talking about a great team in any workplace, you're best if you are a diverse team of individuals who have individualized strengths. And I see that that is very much what we have in Elevate.
Our growth is right now phenomenal. Just about a couple years ago, we moved from 9,000 square feet facility to 19,000 square feet.
Across the U.S., communities are being reshaped. Those who are intentional about working together, creating opportunity for all, and supporting businesses like Elevate Greater Akron will come out on top.
Elevate Greater Akron is a collaboration. It's a way of key organizations and institutions coming together from our business community, our philanthropic community, local governments, and other institutions that drive economic development to really put our shoulders into the work that we all believe is important to create a better place for investment, a better place for growth, a better place for jobs.
Elevate Greater Akron is leading the way through coordinated support of our business community. These are Greater Akron's new fundamentals. Learn more at www.elevategreaterakron.org. Be part of the collaboration. Let's elevate Greater Akron together.
Thanks for that great video, Anna. Welcome again, everyone who's joined the Elevate Greater Akron webinar. It's really great to have you with us. This is the second in a series of quarterly webinars designed to share more about the work of Elevate leadership and the impact their work is having right here in our community. During these webinars, we promise to always bring you some data, have frank dialogue, and leave you with some tangible next steps. Once again, I'm Emily Lungard, Vice President of Elevate Greater Akron. Today, we're really excited to bring you a discussion that hones in on one of Elevate's 4 shared priorities. It's the priority we call the new fundamentals. The new fundamentals is all about the work Elevate leadership do together to directly support business growth in our region. We know that Greater Akron excels when our leaders collectively invest in these new economic development fundamentals. It's really the high quality, consistent, multi-partner coordination with an intentional focus on who is already here, on the existing people, assets, and businesses we already have right here in the region. So focusing on these new fundamentals creates an inclusive, growth-oriented community where it's easy to do business. Today, we're going to hear from Elevate leadership working to support local businesses, aka Elevate's business growth strategy, as well as from some Elevate leaders who are revitalizing our local places, aka our site readiness strategy. So we're going to cover both the people and the places of business growth. First, before we dive in, just a little bit of housekeeping. We know you're busy. Thanks again for joining us. This lunchtime webinar is designed so you can be off camera, you can listen in, but still ask all the questions that you have. The Q&A will be facilitated through our Q&A function here in the Zoom. Please place your questions there, and then during the time we have set aside for Q&A, which will be 2 times actually during today's webinar, we'll make sure we're checking it and get your questions asked and answered. We also invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. It's really good to know who's with us today. And I can see that we're already up over 60 attendees. And if you say hello in the chat, then the other attendees can kind of see who's here and get to know one another. Also, please know we'll absolutely be sharing the slides, contact info, other follow-up info with all of you. So again, we know you're busy, no need to take notes. Okay, let's dive in. I'd like to start by introducing our business growth speakers. I'll ask them to pop on their camera here while I give a little bit about their backgrounds. So first we have Alyssa Carpenter joining us. Alyssa is the Vice President of Economic Development for the Greater Akron Chamber. Alyssa connects businesses with essential resources and works to facilitate collaboration with other economic development and community partners. Prior, Alyssa worked as a shared resource with Team Neo, where she focused on the polymer industry. In this capacity, she has developed relationships across all industry sectors and with partners throughout the state. Welcome, Alyssa. We also have Jason Dodson as shareholder at Roetzel and Andress. Jason guides public entities, private developers, and corporate clients through complex legal and political environments, focusing on real estate development, project management, and public-private partnerships. With over 2 decades of experience working in and advising local government, including serve as chief of staff to 2 Summit County executives, Jason has led local and countywide efforts in infrastructure, economic development, and intergovernmental affairs. Welcome, Jason. And last but not least, we have Andrew Bader. Andrew is a manufacturing entrepreneur and operator with experience building and scaling industrial businesses. He co-founded Additive Engineering Solutions, AES, in 2016 as the first company globally to commercialize large format additive manufacturing technology. Today, AES primarily serves the aerospace and defense markets, producing large 3D printed tooling and molds. In 2025, Andrew co-founded Momentous Mold and Machine, expanding into precision machining and tooling of traditional metals. As a 3rd-generation manufacturing owner, Andrew is proud to contribute to the American industrial base and believes in the unique ability of American manufacturers to solve hard problems and build companies that truly make a difference. Wow, fantastic group here of experts. So welcome, Alyssa, Jason, and Andrew once again. I'm very happy to hand things over to Alyssa to take from here. Alyssa?
Thanks, Emily, and thank you everyone for attending. Today, I'm going to facilitate a conversation talking about how our Elevate Greater Akron partnership supports both the people and the places of our region, and with that, our businesses. I'm honored to facilitate a portion of this agenda where we're going to talk about how businesses can grow and take advantage of the resources that exist in our region to support that growth. In that part of the agenda, we'll have a conversation including Jason and Andrew. But first, I'm going to kick it over to Jason, and he's going to share an overview of what Elevate Greater Akron does to support those businesses through our business retention and expansion strategy. Jason?
Thank you, Alyssa. And as Alyssa indicated, what I wanted to do is kind of give a little bit of a summary in terms of what the BRE team is, as we call it, what we do on, as you heard Diane Miller-Dawson talk about there, a weekly basis, how we interact with businesses, how we probably have interacted with many of your businesses, and kind of what we're looking to do going forward here. It was interesting. The first shot of the video there, I think, was back when I had hair and my beard was a lot less gray. So it reminds me that we've been doing this work now for, I think, going on 8 or 9 years, putting together the collaborative effort and then operating in that collaborative way. And so, as I think you heard earlier, back in 2016, 2017, when we had a change in leadership at the city of Akron, the Greater Akron Chamber, and the county, the new leaders of those organizations came together and said, hey, let's re-examine the way that we are engaging just generally with economic development, but more specifically with the businesses that are located here and what we are doing to actually assist those businesses. Out of that, as you all know, came a broader strategy known as Elevate Greater Akron. And then the strategy within that we're going to talk with you more about today is then, what strategy was put together and what are we doing in order to help our local businesses grow. And so that team, which started with those 3 entities, and they're the same 3 you see at the top here, has grown over the years to include a number of other organizations. And the organizations that you see here on this page are the ones that really attend our weekly meetings. But there's many, many organizations beyond this that collectively we all engage with in order to make sure that we're providing services and addressing the needs of our businesses. As you look at the organizations that are represented here, and I think they're all organizations that everybody on this the Zoom meeting here already knows. You see a pretty broad cross section of what those organizations do and what they're responsible for here in the community. Everything from identifying workers, training workers, rehabbing old industrial and commercial sites, financing projects, getting workers to work at those different locations and beyond. You get a pretty good cross section of folks who touch economic development and work with businesses here in the county. As we then bring everybody together, and as Diane indicated, this is a regular, we meet every Wednesday morning. We bring that group together. We talk about the businesses that we have met with. We talk about the businesses we're going to meet with, and we talk about what we need to do to address the needs that came up with those meetings. So we kind of have subdivided our work into two different categories. The one is proactive engagement, and we have a group of members, and this group is led by Alyssa that engage with about 300 to 350 companies a year from specific sectors of the economy. So our top 50 plus or minus large employers make up part of that portfolio. A number of our local polymer companies, a number of WBE and MBE companies, and then probably the largest portion is our mid-market traded sector companies here that are manufacturing, that are producing goods and pushing those out of our local economy. And those folks on the team schedule meetings with those businesses. They tend to go and meet with those businesses once a year, twice a year, identify, are they having workforce issues? Are they looking to potentially expand? Are they having some issue, whether it be zoning or, planning, some other regulatory issue? And then Anna or Emily, if you can go back, I'll kind of go to the slide here in a minute. And then we try to identify, once the issue is identified, we try to bring in the appropriate partner to help address that issue that would come up. The other part of that group then is really then the folks who drive development projects. So once we already meet with the businesses, once we identify their need, or if a business reaches out to us specifically, so they're not generated on the proactive side, but a business contacts, whether that be a local mayor, whether that be an outreach to the county, something that may come from the state level or team know at the regional level. That group, once we know there's something that actually needs to be addressed by the business, we will bring the appropriate people together, and we work with that business ideally until that need is met. Now, that could be anything from, hey, we need a new location. We've outgrown where we're at. Can you assist us with finding new locations? We'll talk a little bit about site selection here in a minute and what we do in that situation. And it could be on the other end of the spectrum. Hey, we're staying where we're at. We're going to expand our facility. We need money for equipment. We need money for expanding the actual facility itself. Oh, and by the way, we're going to hire 50 additional workers. So we need to have new people coming in and need assistance to be able to hire those individuals. And what incentives can you give us to do all that? What financing partners can you pair us with? And that team then identifies all of those, packages them up, and then tries to get them into the business so that the business can ultimately be successful, execute their project, and grow locally instead of looking for some other place where they can move and undertake their operations. So if you could go to the next slide. And so in a lot of ways, I kind of already touched on the different needs here. And I think this is, for the most part, what we're going to typically deal with, whether it's through a proactive engagement with a business, us going out and meeting with a business on a regular basis. These are the type of issues that will come up. And they're also the type of issues that when they are brought to us that typically a customer is going to, or a business is going to be dealing with. I'm not going to tell you there aren't other more kind of off the wall things that do come up during that process, but I think this slide here, for the most part, captures what we do. And I think what I really want to highlight on this slide is really the center piece of it, because prior to that moment in 2006-17 that led to where we are today, those organizations that you see there in the middle did not necessarily work collaboratively. Oftentimes they worked contrary to one another. And you oftentimes had individuals bumping into each other. You had people calling on the same business 4, 5, 6, 7 times a year when a handful of other businesses weren't even being communicated with by anybody locally. And I think with the system we've built, we not only work collectively to make sure that we're to a point Susie made in the video earlier, we're leveraging the strengths of all of these different organizations to work collaboratively with the businesses. We're doing so in a way that I think we have seen much more success now than what we did before. The way I kind of would orient it before is we would kind of wait for the phone to ring and then everyone would run around in a circle trying to figure out how to address the problem. And now what we're trying to do is be ahead of the game, identify issues, build relationships so that we get called when a business is looking for something, and we can then hit the ground with the business, get things addressed as quickly as we can, and help them grow here locally instead of competing with another place where they might be looking to move, which is kind of the way we operated before. So, from a high level, that's really where we operate. It's a model that we have worked, obviously, with putting in place with our friends at the City of Akron, for the county and the chamber. We use the same model when we're working in one of the other suburban communities. So whether it be Barberton, Stowe, Greene, any of those communities, we're going to use this same approach and we're going to address the business needs the same way, regardless of where they've been. So, or where they are. So with Alyssa, let me turn it back over to you, to take it from there.
Thanks, Jason. And I think you did a great job at articulating how our team works together. And to Jason's point, we're meeting every Wednesday to have these conversations. We met this morning for 2 hours to go over just that. I'm going to turn this over to a conversation with Andrew Bader. As Emily said in his bio, he has been a third generation manufacturing owner. He's worked with us on a number of projects as his business has grown over the years. And I think, Andrew, you are a great example, or a real life example, of how this process works and how companies can engage with us across all the partners from the city, the county, and our state and local partners at Team Neo and Jobs Ohio. So welcome. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for all you do for the city of Akron and Summit County as a business.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the chance to kind of tell a little bit about what we've been doing and how we've been partnering with quite often a lot of those partners that have been up on the screen. And I guess I kind of want to start there because as a business owner, it can get overwhelming when you see all these partners, right? And who do I reach out to? And for people on the call, you don't necessarily need to understand what every single partner does and a certain contact at every single one of those. I've been working with Alyssa for a number of years, and as a business owner, what I'm doing is just bringing, some opportunities that we have and say, hey, Alyssa, here's what we're doing. I don't know if this is a chamber thing. I don't know if this is a county thing. But again, you don't have to be an expert in that as a business owner. Just, reach out to any one of these people, and they'll get you on the right track with the right people. And Alyssa and I have been working, probably for the last 5, 6, 7 years on a variety of different projects. So, yeah.
Andrew, maybe if you could give the audience a little overview of what you're doing in your company, particularly at AES, and how one of those projects progressed.
Absolutely. Yeah. So at AES, we do large format polymer 3D printing. When we got started almost 10 years ago, uh, the technology was brand new. So we were the first company globally to bring it to market. There were a couple companies that had it behind closed doors, but we brought it to the general public where people could send in parts to have us quote and we would make them. Uh, it's been going very well over the last 10 years. We started off with 3 employees and we're up to 30 now. And with that growth, we've outgrown our current facility. So uh, a couple years ago, I reached out to Alyssa and say, hey, we might need to relocate. We might need to build a second facility. We might look at expanding where we are. So kind of your general site selection, building expansion project. And we looked at all three of those. We toured a few buildings. We looked at some land in the greater Akron area. And then we looked at what it would take to expand at our current facility. So um, everything takes longer than you think it does. And, it took us a long time to figure out what we wanted to do, considering all these options. So we eventually went with an expansion at our current facility. So we have 14,000 square feet and we just added 11. That project is almost done and complete. And we ended up getting some help from Jobs Ohio on a low interest rate loan. Now, I didn't reach out to Jobs Ohio. I went to Alyssa, and she was able to bring in all the different partners and say, hey, here's what AES is doing. Here's what their needs are. Um, so that definitely helped. As business people, we're looking at protecting cash flow while we grow. That's kind of like the important thing. So the low interest rate loan was a big help there. So that was just closed up about a month ago. So very recent project. And I can tell everyone about another project. I bought a building on Gilcrest Road last month as well. And AES is going to take a portion of that building. So not only did we just expand physically at our current location, but we are taking up more space at the new building for a Defense Navy project that we're running there. But the other exciting part is we're looking at standing up a new polymer-based business there, which will make polymer thermoplastic materials, essentially. So with the acquisition of that building, I got some help along the way. There was some brownfield funds that could help pay for environmental testing, which was very helpful. That's not particularly cheap. And you might go through that whole process and then decide the real estate's not what you want. So that money just goes into a black hole and goes away. So that was great to get help there. The building requires a lot of renovations. So I said, hey, what kind of help is there out there for, large amounts of renovations? And so Alyssa and the team directed me to the DFA and the PACE financing. That's something right now that I'm working through with DFA, and it's looking like there could be some great opportunities to finance some of these eligible renovations. So I'm not shy about coming out and asking for, hey, this is what we're doing. Does any of this fill any of the buckets that are out there for help? And that's what I encourage other business owners to do, is just let people know what you're up to and what you're trying to achieve. And likely there is something out there that can help you out with your specific need.
And Andrew, I think that's what's been really fantastic about the relationship that we've developed in terms of the Elevate Greater Akron partnership and all of our partners coming to the table, because what's really important, and this, when taking advantage of these resources, is to come and have that conversation beforehand, before you make the purchase, before you put the shovel in the ground, right? So that we can deploy those resources. Because once you've paid for it, most likely, with every program, it's not available, right? Um,
Sure.
so we have had multiple conversations with all the partners from our friends at Team Neo and Jobs Ohio, the county and the city on what scenarios you have and what will be most feasible for your business and make the most sense. So I think that's a really important piece for our audience to remember. And I know sometimes that seems daunting to put those extra meetings on the schedule, but we are doing those all together. And hopefully your experience was that it was time well spent in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. The standard kind of route is to, go to your bank and see what they can do, what kind of help. And it's not just always, on the financing side, but hey, I'm looking for some buildings. And when we were looking at buildings, Alyssa, you and the team brought quite a lot of different options, like pretty immediately, which was great. And there's some things that maybe your standard real estate agent wouldn't have access to. Like maybe there's a couple of buildings that are actually owned by the city and they're trying to offload. So there are some options that you can get that maybe not on the commercial market are available. So it's been really good.
Well, we appreciate that. And I think you've taken advantage of a number of our resources and been able to compile those, uh, you know, to help with the business growth. But as you're looking at this new business that will go in the Gilchrist building, right? We've had conversations that's maybe early stage and we don't necessarily have the Jobs Ohio and some of the typical resources available. But from the polymer aspect, the polymer industry cluster is available, and maybe you can talk about some of that networking that's available as you start up.
Yes. Yeah, that is incredibly important, the networking. So I've been a part of the advisory board for the polymer industry cluster for maybe 4 or 5 years now. That has been outstanding networking. There's a lot of small business owners, but then you're also, shoulder to shoulder with VPs of research and development at, Goodyear or Bridgestone or whoever. So it's a great mix of people and companies. And that has actually helped big time reaching out to people once I've establish some relationships in there to say, hey, I'm looking at starting up this company. What other local suppliers, businesses, local experts should I be connecting with? And I've gotten a handful of people that I've had meetings with that has been really helpful to get advice, around the type of business that I'm trying to start. So it's incredibly important to be very active, and not reactive, in this kind of space if you're trying to grow and do things like that. So it's been outstanding networking.
Great, thanks. Thanks. Well, we appreciate that. And I think your point on proactive fits nicely with the approach that the Summit County partners are taking from that respect. We want to make sure we're coming out and visiting you on a yearly basis, maybe twice a year to have those conversations because we know you're busy in your job and running your company and it's hard to keep track of all those resources. So we want to be there to bring you that. I
Yeah,
think,
Alyssa,
go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, if I could, I mean, I think the thing that, I mean, listening to Andrew's experience and what he's talking about, when we set out to put this together so many years ago, that whole concept of making it easier for a business to navigate the relatively complex system of economic development where there's so many different organizations that have a piece or a part of it, but nobody has all of it. What the design was and what the plan was to really create what we call a relationship manager with that business. And, I think everybody was able to hear how that has developed in terms of, your role at the chamber and in Elevate and Andrew's role as a business owner. And when he talked about, I don't need to worry about calling all these other entities. I just need to worry about calling Alyssa, and she has the knowledge to know who to bring to the table And then once you bring that entity to the table, then you can do the deep dive about whether it fits the needs of a particular circumstance. And I think that really is what we're trying to accomplish so that, quite frankly, business owners can focus on their business and focus on, continuing to employ people, growing the business, making more money for themselves, while those of us who are working through the Elevate process are able to be kind of that concierge service for them and bring them what they need.
No, that's exactly true. At first it can be overwhelming. Who do I call? And you're seeing all these different organizations and you're trying to read which ones offer what. No, this is the whole reason, the Elevate Greater Akron exists is for this purpose. And it's been very helpful. And to Jason's point, I can focus on my business and just contact one person I know and they can do the legwork. So
That's exactly the model. I think we can turn it to question and answer now, Emily. It looks like we have a question from a company that works with manufacturers to get CMMC compliant. Andrew, you might know about that from some of your work as they access Department of Defense contracts. This person's asking how they can get connected to those resources. And I think the best way to get connected to those resources is we can reach out to you after this and have one of our Elevate Greater Akron Business Retention and Expansion meetings where we'll come out along with the municipality that you're in, the county, and either I'll come out or one of our other colleagues to talk about your business, what the opportunities are and where there are resources, either for growth of your businesses or to help connect you to others in the region that can take advantage of your services. Jason, is that?
Yeah, and I think what I'd like to do in addition to what you just said is just, in the question, I think kind of went away, but my recollection was that it looked like it was a relatively new business, probably like a startup venture or somebody that might be early stage in terms of what they're working on. Our team, and in particular, some of the members of our team, focus exclusively on working with smaller businesses, startup businesses, businesses that are kind of beyond startup and in that scale up mode. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that it doesn't matter whether you've been in business for 2 or 3 weeks or whether you've been in business for 50 years and you're one of the larger employers in the community. The different needs that people are going to have that they're going to encounter in their businesses are very broad. And we've tried to assemble a team that is able to help businesses on all parts of that spectrum. And so I did just want to highlight that portion as well. If anybody's watching and they themselves have a business or they know of a business and are thinking, hey, they're just getting started out or they're too small. That's certainly not the case with our approach.
Yep. Excellent.
Emily, in terms of any other questions, what do we do if there's none other in the chat?
Happy to move along, and if folks want to add their questions that come to mind on this section of the agenda, we'll have time later on. So Jason, I say we keep rolling through here, and as folks have additional questions, don't hesitate to throw them into the Q&A or the chat.
Okay, perfect. Well, I mentioned earlier that we, kind of wanted to go through two different, or I think Emily actually mentioned that we wanted to go through two different elements of what that BRE team focuses on an ongoing basis. And hopefully you all were able to take away some informative or some information from what we just kind of walked through with Andrew there and what Alyssa and I presented. The other piece that we want to talk about here is to kind of drill down a little bit more on what we're doing with site readiness work here in Summit County, but really as part of a larger effort regionally here in Northeast Ohio. And so, for the next half hour or so, what we're gonna talk to three folks who are really from a day-to-day basis at the heart of what we're doing here locally, and what's going on in Northeast Ohio. And certainly with Camille and Joan, I think I can't think of two better people to highlight in terms of people that got involved, call it 4 or 5 years ago, when it started to become more obvious that we were having site readiness issues, that we were being overlooked by site selectors because we didn't have sites ready to go for development. They, along with a number of other folks, jumped in, said, we need to start addressing this. We need to start focusing on site readiness, and identifying what sites we have out there that we can be submitting for businesses that are looking to relocate. And they've really helped lead the charge. And then we'll certainly, I think all of you will get some input here from Brandy in terms of what we've been doing on a local level to make sure that we're trying to keep up with where Camille and Joan are driving things regionally. So with that, let me kind of go through and give background and biography for the three folks that are going to be talking here for the next portion of the webinar. So Camille Billups, leads Team Neo's site strategy work, developing and executing initiatives to identify, position, and advance commercial and industrial properties that align with market demand. She is also responsible for closing large, complex projects that lead to the attraction of domestic and international companies to Northeast Ohio. Camille joined Team Neo with 8 years of deal execution experience in investment and banking. And I will tell you personally, I've worked with Camille on many projects that you all would know, that you've read about, that you've driven by at this point in time. And I can't think of a more reliable partner to have as part of this work, and really all the work that we've done with Camille for the last decade or so. Joan Chase is our second speaker here in this portion. Joan is the Chief Operating Officer of the Cuyahoga County Land Bank, where she oversees day-to-day operations and leads the execution of the land bank strategic priorities across property acquisition, redevelopment, disposition, and neighborhood revitalization. Joan's been in that position for, I think, just a few weeks now. I think it coincided with the start of the new year. But Joan is a seasoned economic development and real estate professional with extensive experience in strategic planning, site selection, and nonprofit advisory. Before joining the land bank, Joan was the vice president of the Fund for Our Economic Future and also a senior manager at Allegro Real Estate Brokers and Advisors. And some of the work we're going to talk about that we've done locally here. Joan worked both while she was at Allegro and while she was at the fund in helping us put that work together. Then Brandy Brady. Brandy is one of probably what I would have said until maybe the last 6 months, one of the newer members of our local BRE team, but we have had some additional folks join. So she's kind of becoming one of the more senior members at this point in time. She is an economic development coordinator for County Executive Eileen Shapiro's Department of Community and Economic Development. Brandy's primary focus is on site selection, and she oversees an extensive database of commercial industrial sites and responds to local, domestic, and international business location and expansion inquiries. That's the long way of saying that if anybody on here reaches out to pretty much anybody on the BRE team for a site need here in Summit County, that site need is going to be funneled back to Brandy, and Brandy is going to be the one that's going to handle that. And I think you heard Andrew say, does it with a pretty quick turnaround time. So with that, let me go ahead and first turn it over to Camille, who I think is going to give us some perspective in terms of what she's doing with Team Neo in terms of the regional work here in Northeast Ohio.
Jason, thank you so much. And it is a pleasure to be here with you today. This work is absolutely critical to help grow both the region and the Summit County area. One of the themes you're going to hear throughout the portion of my presentation is that growing companies, this includes both local businesses that want to expand or companies that are brand new to Summit, need real estate options that offer a speed to market and building or land sites with fewer development unknowns. And so a big focus of my work is being proactive in making sure we have competitive sites and buildings for companies to grow into. Jason, you want to ask me the first question?
Yeah, give me 1 second here. Can you explain site readiness for the group?
Site readiness in a nutshell is getting the practical work done to make sure that a site or building is truly usable, not just available. I often hear, hey, there's tons of industrial land sites, for example, in Northeast Ohio. I see these for sale signs all the time. And one of the things what we've realized as we pull back the curtain is, although there may be a site, that site may not have utilities. It may not be zoned correctly. There's so many other complicated factors to make sure that a site is actually ready to go, right? And so having that work done is a huge part of what we consider site readiness. Ideally, when a community is able to quickly answer, is there an industrial building or site option that fits what local companies need? Is the business use allowed under zoning and local rules? What utilities are available and what needs to be extended? What are the timeline and cost drivers, and what's the plan to address them? Clear answers allows companies to choose your site because it allows them to make decisions faster. So I'm looking at industrial sites and building inventory across our 14-county region for Team NEO and working very closely with the Elevate Greater Akron team in Summit. Two big things that make this urgent right now. We have a lot of older industrial buildings. I know a developed area specifically focusing on Akron or some of the other areas in Summit. Many of them are still in good use, but often a lot of them require significant upgrades, which, just unfortunately equals dollar signs. There's also been a shift in the appetite to build on spec. So a lot of the owners, developers, not a lot of new product is coming online versus what the market actually demands. So understanding a community's industrial sites and building inventory, what you have, what's missing, and ideally what's realistically fixable is absolutely key to help drive community success. It's how you put the plan in place to retain key employers and investors as they grow. Go ahead, Jason.
All right. Camille, can you walk us through kind of what a deal flow process looks like? Kind of just from beginning to end, the steps that are in that process, what you do, what others do to bring that to fruition.
It's interesting, the work that we're doing right now. We're at the very top of the sales funnel. And what I mean by that is when a company is looking to expand, hopefully they've gotten all the internal approvals, they've figured it out, they know what the attributes or site specs that they need, but it oftentimes starts with the dirt or the building. Like, where can they actually physically put this new operation? And a big part of that is, unfortunately, that could also stop the deal if they can't find the right fit for them. It forces them to look outside of their ideal community, because what we find for many of these companies is if they are expanding or growing, they want to stay where they are, right? They like their community, they like their workforce. Their first preference is to stay in their home community. But the reality is, if they can't find it, it leads to all sorts of problems, which I'll jump into a little bit later. So when I think of deal flow, it's absolutely critical that you're working with teams like Elevate Greater Akron to understand the current inventory, right? What are the sites and buildings that are truly viable? Reduce any unknown zoning fit constraints, utilities access. And the goal with this is defining a specific pathway for a company. And looking at the various numbers of companies that Elevate Greater Akron touches, And then working with those specific communities, I understand that maybe we prioritize different companies in different regions because each particular community is going to be focused on different things that they're good at, that they want to be good at, that they want more of. But regardless, at being able to answer when a company comes knocking, that you have an actual action plan is a huge differentiator. So, bottom line, a comprehensive plan to help companies execute on their timeline is absolutely critical.
Perfect. And Camille, can you walk us through, and just even as you were talking there, and I may, depending on the example you'll give, I may ask you about another one here, but can you walk us through kind of a local project, whether it's one you're doing now, whether it's one you've done in the recent past, to kind of give an example of some of the things you've just walked through?
Yes. So quick highlight. So Team Neo closed 91 projects last year, so in 2025. And of those 91, 70 were established companies that contractually committed to creating new jobs, payroll, and capital investment, similar to the example company that's on this webinar with us today. That's typical. About 80% of our closed projects are from expansion companies, local companies that are trying to grow. But what happens when a company wants to grow, but they don't have a good real estate fit? A project that we're still working on, and we've been working on this now for a bit over a year. So this company is operating out of two buildings. It's an internationally owned company, and they needed to expand. Their manufacturing line was a bit complex. They have these long M&E runs, about 100 yards, and they require rail to ship their product out. Leadership wanted to keep their current employees and stay in the township where they operate today. Please know that it is always Team Neo's goal to also keep that company in their home community. We understand the benefit of that. But the issue they ran into was the only viable land that met their site specifications, and this other need in the township was undeveloped. It required a rail spur, which equal dollar signs, and gas and electric extensions, which equals more dollar signs. Unfortunately, after extensive research about options and the company seeing the cost and timeline to stay in the township, they immediately understood that a move was unavoidable. They began looking at other US locations and other Northeast Ohio locations. At that point, the community wasn't just competing locally anymore, it was competing nationally, which is absolutely unfortunate. And never a position that we, as a regional partner or that local community wants to be in. Site readiness is what helps the preferred location a company wants to be in stay competitive. And unfortunately, even though this was a key player for this particular community and a huge contributor, whether it was property tax abatement and just the workforce flowing in and out of this area, they had not done the homework, right? Even with these various BRNE calls, they hadn't done the homework to have a site ready for this growing company.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, thank you. And that was, there's another one that I think is similar to what you just outlined. If we've got time at the end, I may come back to you on that.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I mean, I think you did, you got the point across there in terms of why the focus is changing on away from just seeing what's out there on the MLS and what's available that way and what's being listed by brokers to actually doing more of a dive into just undeveloped land, determining what can be developed and moving from there. So to that point, why don't we have Joan come on, and I think we'll kind of walk through the next slide, next set of questions with Joan Chase.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talking about sites. It's like many of my favorite things.
There you go. So, Joan, if you could start, why don't you kind of start us off here a little bit with just, you heard it from Camille and I, just kind of shifting focus of what economic development organizations are looking at doing with sites. And can you talk a little bit about the shifting priorities of businesses and site selectors that are really driving that shift from the economic development side?
Yes. So I think two of my favorite things to look at is every year Site Selection Magazine does a really interesting ranking of what are the top issues that site selectors are weighing and thinking about nationally. And for a long time, it was labor, and then recently it was sites. And now we're seeing two interesting ones creep up into those top decision makers that I think we can chat about a bit today. One is your electrical capacity. Everyone's talking about this. Folks want to talk about data centers, but that electrical capacity piece is critical for folks who are looking to make decisions, especially those really good jobs like manufacturing that have really great family sustaining wages. That electrical capacity and availability is really important. And the other one that's really interesting, and I was scrolling through seeing who was on this call, the other piece that's becoming more and more important is a workforce housing availability. If a large employer is going to come to town, are there places for their workforce to live? Has become more and more important recently. So I'm happy to chat about both of those more, but I do think those are interesting kind of pieces that are coming down the pike that maybe have not been our primary focus as economic developers thinking about sites.
And Joan, I think both of those are pretty interesting concepts. I think the first one with the electrical availability is probably the one that that in the region we've had to tackle for a little bit longer. So can you kind of walk us through that a little bit in terms of where that's presenting challenges, how folks are overcoming those challenges, and then same questions if you want to take them as it pertains to the workforce housing as well.
Sure. So let me start with the electrical. So I read in the Wall Street Journal, and it was completely mind-blowing to me that there are current requests on the electrical capacity load for the entire United States. So folks who are looking to see could they connect to the electrical grid at 5 times the nation's current capacity. So looking to grow users of electrons, consumers of electrons, 5 times more than what we currently have on the grid. Which, as we think about it, that's insane growth, as it takes a long time and a lot of money to put more electrical capacity onto the grid. Now, probably when we're looking at that 5 times number, there are several users who are asking for that connection in multiple locations, as Camille was talking about, before they make their final decision. But even if there are only if it's only a 2x growth, that is a ton of new users that will gobble up the entire electrical capacity to supply. And as we will see, has a huge impact on electrical rates. And then so it makes it harder to become competitive on electrical rates and capacity. How to solve that problem is complicated. I would say the first step for if you're a local economic developer is to think about electricity early in your site process. So I talk a lot about in my work that you have to think about a long-term pipeline of sites. So not just the sites that you can bring to market in 1 to 2 years, but also the sites that you are bringing to market in that 3 to 5 year range. When you're thinking about those sites, it's critical to understand what the electrical capacity is at each of these sites. Work with your utility providers to understand what the time frame and the cost would be to bring any needed range electrical capacity to that site. And then to get really creative about who you're targeting for a site user based on that site. So really understand who might be a good long-term user. We're also seeing some folks come up with really creative ideas. The tax credits for solar and wind have gone away or are being phased out this summer for green energy generation when we're thinking about local energy generation. But there is still significant tax credits available for businesses and developers for things like batteries, if you're thinking about geothermal, which is actually something we're incredibly rich in Northeast Ohio. Who knew? So just encouraging people to think about electricity early and to maybe think about being creative. And then quick shout out, there is a group operating, it's a venture of the Fund for Economic Future called Power Up Local, who are helping companies and economic developers think about what are their options for local energy generation if they need some help. So if you can just do a quick Google, I'll put them in the chat. You can reach out to Power Up Local if you're kind of grappling with this and you need some help. They'd be happy to pitch in.
Perfect. Thank you. So let me kind of turn a little bit here. Another topic that I know you've been instrumental working with the local Summit County folks with, as well as Northeast Ohio, is the area of brownfields and repurposing sites that may have that have a past life, either as a manufacturing facility, maybe multiple manufacturing facilities. They've got prior environmental issues. They may still have buildings on them that sometimes are reusable, sometimes are not. And as we look to increase the number of sites we have, I think we've turned our focus more towards brownfield development, which I know Brandy will talk a little bit about a local effort on that as well that Joan's been involved with. So can you go through a little bit further for everybody, some of the trends with brownfield work, some of the challenges, some of the opportunities that exist there, and why areas like Northeast Ohio, Summit County have to go down that path in order to identify new sites.
Yeah. So brownfields I would wear an I Heart Brownfields t-shirt. I think it's one of the most important pieces of work that we can do for local economic development. So as I just mentioned, electrical capacity is really challenging to get to greenfield sites and incredibly expensive. But the great piece about brownfields, if they were former manufacturers, typically they already have fabulous utility connections to the site. So all of a sudden, both the complexity and the cost of remediating brownfields makes a little more sense when you compare it to running transmission lines and the timeline that would require to greenfield sites. So brownfields are looking more and more competitive in terms of both timing and cost than they have ever before. And brownfields are really important because we have so many of them in Northeast Ohio. We have this fabulous manufacturing legacy. We have an incredibly skilled workforce, but it also means that we do have a range of sites that currently have a fair amount of remediation to be done. When you think about brownfields, you can sort of split them into two pieces. There's the assessment piece, which is finding out how dirty is this site, what might it be contaminated with. That's sort of the first chunk. And then once you understand that, you can then move on to remediation, which is this question of how do we clean it up? How do we fund it? What do we need to be thinking about for future users? So I would really say there are fabulous helps in two places if you're just getting started. One, the Ohio Department of Development has a really great brownfield program. It has been incredibly popular, bipartisan. Both sides of the aisle love the idea of getting old manufacturing sites back into productive use. So I think that's a really great piece of it. The other place that you can work on is there are federal funds available. And I don't want to steal too much of Brandy's thunder, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. She can talk about a great project we worked on together. But there is a local, the Kansas State University has a TAB program, which is essentially a technical assistance for brownfields. They are absolute geniuses about brownfields. And so if you have a brownfield site that you're trying to remediate and you don't know where to start, I would start by reaching out to the KSU TAB program, it's called. And my email is, if you need any help just about where to get started, my email is on the Land Bank's website. Feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to point you in the right direction.
Perfect. All right. I am sure we will come back to you when we do Q&A, but I do want to make sure that just to make sure we're kind of keeping on track here. I do want to get to Brandy, and I think you gave us a good pivot point there on the brownfield work. So let's, Brandy, let me kind of turn it over to you now. And what I'd like you to do is maybe give an update on what we're doing locally within Elevate Greater Akron on site site preparedness, site development. Maybe start with the baseline. I think you've heard a lot of the comments that have been made today about what's going on a regional level, how we tie into that. I think I'd certainly have you touch a little bit on the brownfield work we're doing here, and then what we've been doing with the site development fund. So I will kind of turn it over to you because I know you've got some more slide decks on that, and then I might pop in from time to time and ask questions or clarification points on stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jason. I am so excited to share this with the group because site selection, just like Joan said with her I Heart Brownfields, I Heart Site Selection. I love the sites that we have, further developing these sites and really ultimately with the end goal of connecting these sites to businesses that are eventually going to bring some really great jobs to our communities. So it really ties together something very dear to my heart. So I'm very excited to share about this. We'll start kind of on the level of reactive, what we do here in Summit County on a reactive site search level. And the basis of that is responding to the site search requests and submissions that we get. These come from lots of different organizations locally. We get a lot of requests through Team Neo and Jobs Ohio, and we're responding to these on pretty much a daily basis, which is really exciting and really showcases there's lots going on in the area and what we have to offer. And so we do this through a tool called Zoom Prospector. And it's a publicly available website. You just go to properties.jobsohio.com and you can see everything we have available in Summit County, both on the building side and on the site side. Right now we have over 650 listings. That includes our local industrial buildings and industrial sites, commercial and retail. The only thing we don't keep on there is residential, but everything else that could potentially bring jobs is on Zoom Prospector. What's also really great about Zoom Prospector is that it is a database of statistics. So you can get statistics from community, regional, statewide, on all kinds of different areas that relate to economic development, occupational, demographic, and labor force data. So it's a really great tool for both businesses who are looking to grow, you want to get an idea of what's out there, and also for anyone who's looking for statistics to really help understand what we have in our community. We can move on to the next slide. So we also we talked about the reactive side with site selection. We also work on the proactive side with site development and site readiness. So a few of the different tools that we have in our pocket that we work with on a daily basis are site identification and development. That is a big one for me. We work with a lot of our partners to do this, and we're really looking to see what sites do we have out there, both greenfield and brownfield, that we can bring back into inventory that we can make usable for businesses who are looking to locate here. As Joan talked about, we have our brownfield work. We are actively working to build a Summit County brownfield site inventory. This includes any contaminated buildings or sites that we can potentially look at using brownfield money that's readily available, that we've actually already pursued one grant and one that we'll talk about that in a moment. But we want to build an inventory so we know that when we're going after this money, where we can allocate it. And then we'll talk about Site Ohio, which is something that is very dear to my heart. It's something I've worked very, very hard on over the last few years. And this is a program through Jobs Ohio that offers certification for sites that say these sites are ready to go. Like Camille talked about, businesses, when they're coming in, they want to know that they can just kind of plug and play, that these sites are ready to go. We've done the due diligence. We know what is here, what's not here. We have utilities to site that business can just come and set up, and these sites are ready to go. This program looks at any site. We're only looking at land sites here. We're not looking at buildings. Land sites only that are at least 30 contiguous developable acres and that have an industrial/manufacturing use. component. What's really great about this program, and I tell all of our municipalities, any real estate partners, if you are working with a site or you have a site in your community that is at least 30 contiguous developable acres, this can help market your site in a really great way to show businesses this site is ready to go. And it costs no money for you to participate. And on top of that, we do about 95% of the work. I ask you some questions about the site, and I do all the background on it. So right now, we've just finished our last round of Site Ohio authentication, and we have one site in Summit County that moved forward through the process. It's actually being divided into two separate sites now. So very soon, we're going to have our first two sites in Summit County that are Site Ohio authenticated. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and Brandy, to maybe tie in with one of the comments that you heard earlier in terms of electrical capacity, why don't you kind of walk through what happened with one of the sites and electrical load?
Absolutely. So we learn a lot about our sites through, especially Site Ohio. We really have to dig down and find out everything we can. And one of our very best sites in Summit County, our biggest, best greenfield site that we're constantly marketing, we found out just doesn't quite have enough power for a typical industrial user. But as almost a negative that seems, it really isn't, because that has further allowed us to build the relationship with First Energy and really work on those studies to say, we don't have this right now. What can we do to get to this point where this site can have this amount of power? So we've been actively working with First Energy. Actually, one of our partners, again, we talk about all of our partners that we have as part of Elevate Greater Akron. First Energy is one of those partners. They come on our call once a month on our Wednesday calls, and we talk about all the projects we have going on. If there's a business that we meet with through our business retention visits, and they say, we need some electrical capacity, we have that conversation. Same thing with all of our utilities. So it really opens that up. But through Site Ohio, we identified that need, as well as another one I'll talk about when we get to one of our next slides. And we use that data to be able to further develop these sites.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome, of course. Moving on to our next slide. One of the resources that we use to further our site development is this really great thing that we call our Site Development Fund. This is a fund, it's $1.3 million initially. It was built on a $1 million private grant that we received, and then $300,000 contribution from the 5 partners. We can see here the Greater Akron Chamber, County of Summit, City of Akron, the GAR Foundation, and the Summit County Land Bank. What's really great about this fund, and something that I think really adds a level of trust and transparency with it, we have a steering committee. That is the group that makes the decisions how this money is going to be spent. And it's a really great system of checks and balances. It is representatives from all 5 of these organizations who are making the decision how this money is going to be spent. I guess probably if you left it up to me, I'd pick my very favorite site and throw it all in on one. So we have some advisors who keep me in check from spending all the money. I have no control over it, but I'd like to think I do. So then with this site fund, we also work with Allegro Real Estate Advisors. They help us in a lot of different areas with this fund. We have a project that we're doing right now that we need an RFP. We need an environmental company to come out and do some work, and they created that RFP for us and helped us set up the interviews with the different environmental contractors and really help kind of manage the operations side of the Site Development Fund. In addition to that, I think what's really great about this fund is that, like I said, it's all these organizations working together. We all have the common goal of wanting to make these sites viable. We want new business coming in, and with this fund, we're able to do that through the work of our partner organization. So I think that really just plays into the narrative of Elevate Greater Akron and how we all work together, both in the big group as well as in smaller groups. And then we'll talk about some of the projects we've used the Site Development Fund for. One of my very favorite, this is a great site. It's at the corner of Wilbeth and Arlington, and it was really an eyesore. It was an abandoned industrial site, and using money from the site development fund, we were able to help get some environmental due diligence done on it. It was purchased by a developer and is now on the market for development purposes. We have some interested parties, and it's just great to be able to see the collective work we were able to do because of the site fund to get that site back up to what is eventually going to be another operating organization. We're doing the same thing with several pieces of land that used to be owned by Goodyear. Some still is, some it's over on the east end of Akron, and it's a piece of property that we've wanted to know for quite a while, how can we best utilize this land, but never really had a means to be able to know what environmental work would need to be done. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe this land is great to go, but until we have that work done, we don't know. So to be able to use a part of the money from this fund to be able to look into that is something very, very, very exciting for us. I love talking about our Killian Road property. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Brandy. Hey, I think just for time, I'm kind of getting pinged here
Oh,
by Emily to make sure we're keeping on track. Do you want to just dive any more into the Brownfield program, and then we'll wrap it up and move on to Q&A?
absolutely. So,
Thank you.
yeah, of course. So I'll reference back to something Andrew said early on, and he said it's expensive to do this environmental work, and he is not joking about that. It's very expensive, and we really want to be good stewards of the site development fund and any funds that are available to us. So one way we've looked at further expanding that is through the Brownfield program. Working with, again, our partners, we were able to secure a $1.2 million EPA grant for our Brownfield program. We secured this the end of last year, and we'll be implementing it over the next couple of years. Again, working to build that Brownfield inventory and do some basic Brownfield work, eventually getting to long-term looking at mitigation. So working together with all of our partners, we were really able to do something great and securing, again, $1.2 million through the EPA Brownfields grant. And again, looking toward future opportunities as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Brandy. And thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Joan. Thank you, Camille, for kind of walking through and bringing everybody up to speed with what's going on locally and regionally with site readiness work here to hopefully ultimately land with enable businesses to expand here and stay here, but also to attract new businesses to the region as well. We do have a little bit of time here briefly for Q&A. I know there are two that I wanted to touch on. The first one is a comment in the Q&A section of the Zoom, which is, you mentioned the PACE program with respect to the DFA. Can you explain PACE? Thank you. So the PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. And it is a loan program that was created by the Ohio legislature, placed into the Ohio Revised Code. Many states have done a similar thing. And essentially what it is that you get a loan from a lender. You use that money to undertake energy efficient improvements to your property. And then you can pay that loan off through an assessment on your property rather than a typical loan repayment process. And when I say an assessment, it's an assessment that goes on your tax bill. It's paid twice annually. And generally, you get a little bit better than market rate interest on those PACE loans. And the other reason that it's beneficial is that it is off the book financing for the business. So whereas typically, if you take a traditional loan, you're going to have to put on your balance sheet that you have that loan. When you do a PACE loan, because it's repaid through an assessment on your tax bill, as opposed to a normal repayment mechanism, it doesn't get booked on your balance sheet as a loan obligation. And so those are two of the reasons why folks like to do them. The third reason is that you can finance that loan over the useful life of the energy efficiency improvement at a fixed rate. And so, oftentimes you can get fixed rate money that is 15, 20, even up to 25 years, depending on the improvements you're making. And when you're typically a little bit below market, you're fixed rate long term, and it's not on your balance sheet, that ends up being a pretty good proposition for a lot of borrowers that otherwise would have less favorable borrowing situations from their typical lenders. If you want, and Mark Hansel asked that question, Mark or anybody else on the call, if you want more information, please reach out to myself. Please reach out to Alyssa. Here in Summit County, the PACE program is operated through the Development Finance Authority, and both of us can get you connected with the right people to talk to over there. Then the second item that I wanted to bring up in the Q&A here is Camille, if you could touch on the Developing Opportunities Toolkit that you and your folks at Team Neo have developed here, and give a little bit of a shout out to the work you guys have done with that.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. So I mentioned all of the steps and potential problems. One of the things that the Developing Opportunity Toolkit does, and it's a free resource on Team Neo's website, is it lays out a path to get these industrial land sites ready. So it will help you analyze your inventory, really look at some of the key risks, anything from zoning to utilities to even site access that may make the site that you're evaluating either a go or a no-go for future time and investment. It'll define a pathway for companies to figure out who does what in what order. So for example, it is always great to call Alyssa and Jason, but for communities that are looking at this, it will really help you strategize who to bring on the team in addition to the EGA folks that can help you, anything from your fire chief, which may be helpful in terms of building and permitting, all the way to really understanding sewer and water access. And then the goal is, after you have completed these steps as laid out by the toolkit, you will essentially be able to answer questions that a company may have, because the reality is we don't expect people to put shovels in the ground at this point. The expectation from a lot of companies is it's having a plan in place that meets their timeline and that they feel has been well thought out and is reasonable. So please check out this toolkit. We're excited to walk you through it if you have any questions. Thanks, Jason.
Perfect. Thank you, Camille. All right, Emily, I know you were trying to get us done by 12:55 so that you can do the closeout, and I think we are right at 12:55. So let me turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Jason. Impressive time management there. We covered a lot of ground. And yeah, like you said, we like to get everybody out on time. Your time is precious. So thanks again for being here. There was a question that came through. Please know everything you saw here, the slide deck, contact information, other follow-up, even a recording of this event will be shared with you. So that information will be in your inbox, hopefully as soon as today, if not later this week. Again, huge thank you to our panelists, giving you all a round of applause. Fantastic information shared today. We got a couple of good questions, but I encourage folks to continue to reach out to us with those questions. We promise to leave every webinar with some tangible next steps. So we're not just talking, we want to give you some homework, give you some ways for you to get engaged in this work. So here's what we call our calls to action. The first actually is what Camille just set us up for. So thanks, Camille. Please feel free to use this QR code and download your own copy of Team Neo's Development Opportunities Toolkit. It's an awesome resource. Please use it. Please share it. Stay in touch with us. We, in addition to these webinars, have quarterly newsletters. If you hit this QR code, that'll take you to our site and you can get signed up for those. I promise it won't be a lot of spam. It'll just be your quarterly newsletter with some good updates. And then last but certainly not least, maybe the big takeaways is one, if you are a local business looking to grow, reach out. Alyssa Carpenter is your point of contact there. She is standing by, ready to chat with you and help us identify and fill these sites. You heard a lot today about all of the site readiness work happening in Summit County and beyond. Let us know if there's something on your mind or that your business is thinking about. Connect us with your colleagues, your vendors, your clients. We want to know if there are changes coming to your site or to your community. We want your help with future site planning. If you know of a site, of a building, a growing business that should be on our radar, let us know. Brandy Brady is your point of contact there. She would, of course, be more than happy to help you out, even wearing her I Heart Site Selection t-shirt maybe when she does it. So once again, thank you to our speakers. Thank you to all of you for attending. Everyone's emails are here. You will get those in your inbox as well. Please, last thing I ask of all of you in terms of calls to action, you will be getting a follow-up survey from Anna Richards here at the Greater Akron Chamber. It'll take you no more than 3 minutes. Please fill out the survey because it really helps us make sure these webinars are getting you the information that you care about, that you want to hear more about. So please fill out that survey, provide your feedback. And last but not least, mark your calendar. Our next Elevate Greater Akron webinar is on April 27th. So more information to come on that, including announcing the topics. Let us know if you have any ideas, things you want to hear about. And with that, thanks again to everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Take care.